Hello, everyone. We hope you had a very good weekend. We hope you got out and enjoyed the beautiful weather that we had. Yeah. So today we are going to hit our last section of radicals. So we have added, subtracted, multiplied, and divide with radicals. We have graphed them. Last week you graphed them. And then this week, we are going to concentrate on solving radical equations. So that is the last thing we have to do with radicals before we move on. So I know some of you guys are very procedural. You like that recipe of how we solve things. So the first thing when we are solving radical equations, the first thing you're going to want to do is isolate your radical. You're going to want to get that square root or the cube root or whatever it is totally by itself. The second thing we're going to do is we are going to square both sides. Notice I put parentheses or quotation marks around square because it's not always going to be square both sides, and I'll show you what I mean in a second. Once you have squared both sides, you're going to solve for x then. And then your fourth step, you always want to check your solutions because sometimes we might have those extraneous solutions like we've talked about before. Okay? So just like if we were in the classroom, I really encourage you guys to be doing these problems along with me. So grab a piece of notebook paper and a pencil and do them with me to see if you're getting them right before you do your homework, okay? So first one we are going to do looks like this. So we want to solve the equation. So the square root of 3x minus 5 minus 6 equals negative 1. And notice we can't combine these because one is on the outside and one is on the inside of a square root. All right, so if we look back at our steps, the first step I said we wanted to do was to isolate our radical, get a radical by itself. So I want to get all of this by itself. So in order to do that, I need to get that minus 6 to the other side. So I'm going to add 6 to both sides. Which is going to leave me with this. Next thing we want to do is we want to get rid of that square root. So in order to undo a square root, what we do is we square both sides. So to undo a square root, we square it. Those are inverses of one another. So over here, that square root and that square are going to cancel. So we're going to be left with 3x minus 5. And over here on this side, 5 squared, of course, is 25. All right, so we did step number 2. We squared both sides. Next step then is to solve for x. So in order to solve for x, I'm going to add 5 to both sides. So I'm going to get 3x equals 30. Divide both sides by 3, and I'm going to get x equals 10. Now, this last step is super duper important. We need to make sure we check our solutions. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to plug my my answer, my potential answer, into the original function. In for x. And see if I get negative 1 in return. So let's go ahead and clean up the square root first. So I'm going to get 30 minus 5, which is going to give me 25. Square root of 25 is 5 minus 6, and we do indeed get negative 1 equals negative 1. So this answer worked out. X equals 10 is a value. It's a good solution. All right, so let's go ahead and do another one that's super similar to this. All right, so we know exponent over index. Another way I could write this equation is as a cube root. And I'm going to do that because I think a lot of you can see it better in your heads that way. All right, so cube root, but we're still going to follow the same type of steps. So the first thing that we need to do is get our radical by itself. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. And it's still not totally by itself. I need to do something with this -1 that's out in front. So I'm going to divide both sides by -1. And I'm going to end up getting the cube root equals -2. All right, so our first step was done. We got the radical by itself. Next step, I wrote to square both sides. But again, I put that square in quotation marks because we're not actually going to square both sides. What are we going to do that's going to undo a cube root? And hopefully I can hear you all saying that we're going to cube both sides this time. So cube root and a cube are going to cancel each other out. So here we're going to be left with a 3x minus 6. And over here, a -2 cubed. Make sure if you're typing this into your calculator, you do put parentheses around that -2. -2 cubed, though, is going to give me a -8. Third step, we're going to solve for x. So I'm going to add 6 to both sides. And then divide both sides by 3. And it looks like we're going to get -2/3 as our potential answer. Again, though, we need to make sure we check those. Step 4, we got to check it. And again, we need to plug it into our original equation. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's see here. So let's go ahead and clean up our root first. So 3 times -2/3 is going to give us a -2. And -2 minus 6 is going to give us a -8. Cube root of -8 is going to give us -2. 6 plus 2 gives us 8. So -2/3 does in fact work. It is a viable solution. 1 second, guys. I'm busy right now, bud. I'm busy. I'll be out in a minute, okay? Thank you. My child was yelling at me. I apologize. I'm surprised that's the first time that he's interrupted a video. Going good. All right. Okay. I will do this example in a separate video because I think you guys can kind of get the gist of it. So remember, another way we could write this is just as a 4th root. So rather than squaring or cubing both sides, we would take both sides to the 4th power. Again, I will do this one in a separate video so you can see it. Which means I think I just have one more example I want to do in this video. But I will make another video with some other examples in it too. All right. So again, 1/2 power. Another way we can write that 1/2 power is just as a square root. So I'm just gonna rewrite this quick. And now our first step was always to isolate our radical. Notice these ones are going to be different because we have radicals on both sides. But notice they are both by themselves, so we are okay with that. Both of them are all by their lonesome, so we're good with that. So our next step then, to undo a square root, we are going to square both sides. So square roots are going to cancel out. Step 3, we're going to solve for x. We're going to end up getting 2x equals 4. So x equals 2, potentially. And again, I need to check these, so let's go ahead and plug it into an original equation. I'm going to plug my 2 in for x. So over here, I'm going to get 6 minus 5, so square root of 1. And 2 minus 1 again is 1. Square root of 1 does in fact equal the square root of 1, so we are good with x equals 2. All right. So again, hopefully you guys got the gist of how to do this. As always, if you need help, please email me or Mrs. Cadlick, or you can always join our office hours as well. I'll make another video with some other examples in there too, just in case you need some more. I hope you guys have a fabulous night, and I will see you tomorrow.